The bullet did not
I
kill
don't
him
feel
immediately.
good.
That was the
I know,
cruelest
sweetie.
part. That
It's
Kang
gonna be
Tae Soo,
okay.
the man who had survived 14 years at the top of a criminal empire through precision and the complete absence of carelessness, had been shot twice in a parking garage by a man he had already decided not to trust, and had still found the presence of mind to walk 12 steps to the car before he fell. He was alive. The surgeons had confirmed it with the careful tone doctors use when alive is the best news available and is not, in the context of the evening, particularly good news. Park Jin-woo stood at the door of room 307 with his hands folded in front of him. Not at his sides, which would mean ready. Folded. Which meant he had stopped preparing and started waiting, and Tae Soo had known Park Jin-woo for 14 years and understood the difference without being told. The succession was already moving. 3 calls had been made. The empire, the thing that had cost him his brother's silence, his mother's funeral, 2 years with the only woman who had ever looked at him without calculation, was already managing itself. Did not need him. It had been designed with extraordinary care to not need him. He did not ask about any of it. He lay in the white bed with the 4 in his arm and the monitor keeping its metronomic record of what remained, and he looked at the doorway and he asked one question. Where is she? Park Jin-woo went very still. In 14 years he had watched this man order the disappearance of rivals, sit unmoved through interrogations, and conduct business during his own mother's burial. He had never, not once, heard him ask for something he could not take. He understood immediately. He left without a word. Tae Soo turned his eyes back to the doorway. The corridor was empty. The monitor continued. Somewhere in the city, in a house he had never entered but could describe from memory. The blue door, the potted plant that leaned left, the light that stayed on longest in the second-floor room, his daughter was asleep. He had kept her safe from everything. He had not found a way to keep her safe from this. Bring her, he had said. And now he waited. For the first time in 14 years Kang Tae Soo simply waited, with no strategy, no exit, no controlled outcome prepared. Just the empty doorway and the monitor and the specific, irreversible knowledge that he had run out of distance. There was only what remained. And what remained was her. She arrived at 12:23 a.m. in her school uniform. That detail destroyed him. Quietly, completely, in the way only small things can destroy men who have survived enormous ones. She had been lifted from sleep, brought through the city in the middle of the night, and nobody had thought to change her clothes. Or perhaps there had been no time. Or perhaps, and this was the thought that landed hardest, she had been in such careful hands that the woman who brought her had understood. Arrive as you are. Let him see exactly who she is. Zara Kang walked into the hospital corridor holding the hand of Park Jin-woo's wife and looking at everything with the particular focused attention of a child who has recently learned that the world does not always announce itself before it changes. She was 8 years old. She had her mother's face, Amara's wide-set eyes and the specific quality of her mouth when she was deciding something. But the way she moved through the corridor, reading the large quiet men at intervals along the walls, registering the cold blue light and the antiseptic silence without flinching, that was his. That absolute, instinctive assessment of every room before committing to it. He had not taught her that. She had arrived with it. She stopped in the doorway. He turned his head and saw her. 8 years of car windows and school gates and bakery glass. 8 years of watching from the outside, of cataloging her in fragments, of knowing the laugh and the red coat and the wrong piano notes but never the room, never the proximity, never this, compressed into a single moment of her standing in the doorway in her school uniform with sleep still creasing her left cheek and her eyes. His eyes, dark and steady and giving nothing away until they gave everything, looking directly at him. He did not speak. He was not capable of speech yet. He had prepared things to say. He was a man who prepared always, who never entered a room without the words arranged, and every one of them had dissolved the moment she appeared. She was not an idea anymore. She was not a photograph or a school gate glimpse or the small shape of a child pressing her nose to bakery glass. He was Zara. Present and specific and standing 3 meters away, and he had 8 years of distance to account for and approximately 4 hours to do it. She took one step into the room. Then another. She stopped at the foot of the bed and looked at him with Amara's patience and his own refusal to accept anything incomplete. And she said in a voice that was steadier than any 8-year-old voice had the right to be in a room like this. They said someone who loves me wanted to see me. Pause. Is that you? Kang Tae Soo, The name that made commissioners look away and prosecutors build careers on failing to reach. Looked at his daughter for the first time in a room where she could see him looking. "Yes," he said. "That's me." He asked her small things. What grade she was in. Who her teacher was. Whether the school had changed the color of the front gate. It had been blue the last time he drove past, but that was 6 months ago and he had not been able to get close enough since. Small questions, safe questions, the kind a man asks when he is practicing being present and does not yet have the language for the real conversation. He already knew the answers. All of them. Park Jin-woo had delivered a careful report every 3 months for 8 years. A quiet, unspoken loyalty, never requested, never acknowledged between them, simply done. 3rd grade. Miss Choi, strict but fair. The gate was still blue. Zara answered him the way her mother had raised her. Directly, without decoration. She answered and then she watched him with that precise, inherited attention, and he understood that she had already noticed something was wrong with the ratio. He was asking questions whose answers he received too easily. Not the small flinch of searching. Just the nod, the follow-up, the fluency of a man who already knew. He let it go. For now. "Are you sick?" she asked. "Yes," he said. "My mum was sick." She held her hot chocolate with both hands. Both hands always the way Amara had held everything warm, as if warmth was something you kept rather than merely felt. At the end she was very tired. "Are you tired?" The question moved through him like something sharp wrapped in something soft. "Yes," he said. "I'm very tired." She nodded slowly, the way she had nodded through the other questions. Receiving information, filing it, making space for more. She looked at the 4 in his arm and then at his face and then at the monitor, and he watched her read the room the way he had spent 8 years watching her read other rooms, and the specific pain of it, that she was this person, this exact person, and he had made himself a window when he could have been a door. Arrived without warning and without mercy. He reached toward the table beside the bed and poured water into her cup before it emptied. She watched his hands. She did not comment. But her eyes returned to his face afterward with something new in them. Something quietly recalibrating, the way a compass adjusts when it finds north has moved, and Kang Tae Soo understood, with the bone-deep certainty of a man who had spent 14 years reading what people don't say, that his daughter had just noticed something. She was letting him get there in his own time. She had her mother's grace. It was the most generous thing anyone had ever done for him, and she was 8 years old and didn't even know she was doing it. 2:14 a.m. She had finished the hot chocolate. She had set the cup down with both hands carefully on the bedside table, and she had straightened slightly in the chair the way children straighten when they have decided something, and then she asked it. Not loudly. Not with the telegraph drama of someone who knows they are about to detonate something. Just directly, the way she did everything. "How do you know I play piano?" The room went very still. The monitor continued. The corridor outside sustained its low, institutional hum. Everything in the world that was not this question kept moving, indifferent and ordinary. And Kang Tae Soo, who had faced down prosecutors and rival syndicate heads and the specific silence of men who were deciding whether to trust him, sat in the hospital bed and felt the full weight of 8 years land on his chest at once. She was looking at him. She was not going to look away. He could see that immediately. It was the thing that had undone him from the moment she stepped into the doorway. The specific quality of her attention that refused every deflection before it was even attempted. She had his architecture and Amara's patience, and together those two inheritances made her, in this moment, the most formidable person in the building. More formidable than Park Jin-woo with his folded hands. More formidable than the rival syndicate that had put 2 bullets in him 6 hours ago. More formidable than every prosecutor who had spent years trying to build a case from the outside of his life. She was on the inside. And she knew it. "Because I was there," he said. Her breath shifted, barely, but he heard it. "Where?" "In the back row." The silence that followed was the loudest thing in the room. Zara's hands were very still in her lap. Her face had gone through something. A rapid internal recalibration that he watched happen in real time, and what remained on the other side of it was not confusion. It was precision. She was arranging information. He was very good at it. "The recital," she said. Not a question. "Yes. I got the notes wrong." "You laughed." His voice came out quieter than he intended. "Instead of crying. You stopped and you looked at your hands like they'd surprised you and then you laughed." He stopped. Zara was looking at him with an expression that had crossed out of childhood entirely. The face of someone doing arithmetic on something enormous and arriving, digit by digit, at the only answer the numbers allowed. My mum told me, she said slowly, that my father loved me from very far away. The monitor. The corridor hum. The first gray suggestion of morning against the window that neither of them had noticed yet. She said he watched. Her eyes didn't leave his face. Are you him? He told her the truth. Not the empire. She was 8 years old and the empire was not what she needed from him tonight, was not what anyone had ever truly needed from him, was the thing he had chosen instead of everything that mattered, and he was not going to make it the last thing he gave her. He told her instead the thing she deserved. The watching. The specific private 8-year catalog of a man who had loved his daughter from the outside of her life because he had told himself the outside was safer. The bakery. Her 7th birthday. The red coat, brick red with the wooden buttons, you kept doing the top one up and then undoing it again the whole time you were waiting, and the rabbit-shaped cake behind the glass, and the way she had pressed her nose to the window and her breath had made a small fog circle that she'd drawn a face in with her finger. He had been in a car across the street. He had watched the whole thing. The school gate. The first day. The way she had walked to the entrance, stopped and turned back once, scanning the crowd the way a child scans for the specific person they hope is there. I knew you were looking for someone, he said. I knew it wasn't me. I was there anyway. The recital. The wrong notes. The laugh. I thought, he said, and his voice had lost its edges, not broken but emptied, the way a room empties when everyone in it has finally left, that the outside was the safest place. That a man like me inside your life would bring everything I'd built through the door with me. And I couldn't. He stopped. Started again. I couldn't do that to you. I couldn't do that to her. Zara had not moved. Her hot chocolate was cold. Her hands were in her lap, still, and her face was doing something that was not crying yet but was the thing that lives directly before it. That specific tightening that held quality that Amara had too, that absolute refusal to let grief arrive before it was fully understood. My mum never said anything bad about you, she said. Very quietly. Not once. I used to ask and she would just say he loves you from far away. She said it like it was enough. Pause. Was it enough for her? The question was a blade, clean and precise, and it went exactly where she had aimed it. Not cruelly but honestly, the way her mother had always aimed at truth. And Kang Tae Soo, who had made rooms go quiet and men look away for 14 years, had no answer that was both true and painless. So he gave her only the true one. No, he said. It wasn't. And she deserved more than I knew how to give. Zara looked at him for a long moment. Then she said, but you came to the recital. I always came, he said. I was always there. He said yes. Simply. Without management, without the controlled architecture he had applied to every difficult truth for 14 years. She had asked him directly and he gave it to her directly. Yes. One word, placed in the room without cushioning or qualification. Because she was Amara's daughter and she would have felt the cushioning and it would have cost him the only currency he had left. And then Zara went quiet. 8 years old. Recently motherless. Sitting in a hospital room at 2:47 in the morning with a father she had never stood in a room with, who had watched her from bakery windows and back rows and across school gates. And she went quiet in the specific way of someone doing enormous mathematics in real time. Not shutting down. Processing. There was a difference and he knew it, and he sat in the bed and watched it happen and did not look away. Because looking away was the thing he had been doing wrong for 8 years. He would not do it now. The silence lasted 4 minutes. He knew because the monitor marked it. 4 minutes of Zara's small hands still in her lap and her eyes focused somewhere past him. At the wall, at the window, at the specific interior distance of a child who is rearranging everything she thought she knew about the shape of her own life. He did not rush her. He waited. The most honest thing he had done in 8 years was this. Simply waiting without an outcome prepared, while his daughter decided what to do with who he was. Finally she said, Mom told me the distance was love. Yes. But you could have just been there. Not anger. Very genuine, careful inquiry. The question of a child trying to understand a logic that doesn't resolve. You could have just been my dad. The words landed without mercy. He let them. Yes, he said. I could have. But you didn't. No. She looked at him then, fully the way she had been looking at him all night, but with something added now, something that was not accusation but was the thing that lives in the same neighborhood. I used to look for you, she said. At school. At the recital. I used to think maybe you'd just show up one day. Kang Tae Soo closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them she was still looking at him, and her eyes were wet but her voice was steady, because she was her mother's daughter through and through. I'm sorry, he said. 2 words. No structure around them, no qualification, no strategic positioning. The first apology of his adult life that was not, in any dimension, a move. 𝘉𝘳 looked at him for a long time. Then she said very quietly, Mum said you would be. 3:18 a.m. He reached for the bedside drawer. Slowly, because most movements cost him now, a fact his body announced without drama and his face refused to confirm, and he opened it and he placed 3 things on the blanket between them. He did not explain them immediately. He let her see them first. He had learned from 8 years of watching her, that 𝘉𝘳 Kang liked to look at something fully before she was told what to think of it. The letter first. Small envelope sealed. Her name on the front in his handwriting. Precise, spare, no movement wasted. Underneath her name in smaller script. For when you are ready. There is no hurry. She looked at it without touching it. Then the photograph. She picked it up with both hands, the way she held everything that mattered, and she looked at it in silence. It was a hospital room. Different from this one, warmer, with a window showing daylight and a single white orchid on the sill that Tae Soo had sent ahead before he arrived. Amara was in the bed. She was exhausted and luminous in the way of women who have just done the impossible. And she was looking down at the small wrapped bundle in the arms of the man beside her with an expression of such complete, undefended love that it was almost difficult to witness. And Tae Soo, in his suit because he had come directly from something he would not name tonight because tonight was not for that, was holding 𝘉𝘳. Newborn 𝘉𝘳. He was looking down at her with the face of a man who had just for the first time in his adult life, fully understood what he was capable of losing. Not power. Not the empire. Not the name that made rooms go quiet. Her. Mum looks happy, 𝘉𝘳 said. Her voice was very careful. She was the happiest I ever saw her. That day. 𝘉𝘳 looked at the photograph for a long time. Then at him. Then back at the photograph. At the version of him that existed in that room before the choice, before the distance, before 14 years of managed absence. You're holding me, she said. Yes. You look like you don't want to stop. He could not speak for a moment. I didn't, he finally said. She set the photograph down carefully beside the envelope. Then she looked at the third object. Small, gold, warm-toned in the low light. Her mother's ring. Amara had pressed it into his hand in a hospital corridor years ago and said, give it to her when she's ready. She'll know what it means. 𝘉𝘳 did not touch it. She looked at it for a long time. Then she looked at him. She knew you'd be here, didn't she? She said. Not a question. At the end. She knew you'd find a way to. She prepared me for this. Your mother, he said slowly, was the bravest person I ever knew. 𝘉𝘳's face crumpled just once, just briefly, and then steadied. I know, she said. I know she was. 4:02 a.m. Without asking, 𝘉𝘳 climbed onto the bed. It was a child's decision, made from the body before the mind finished its reasoning, direct and uncomplicated in the way her mother had always made the truest decisions. She simply moved, set down the photograph, slid off the chair and climbed up beside him with the careful, deliberate movements of a small person navigating something fragile. He went very still. She curled against his side. Her head found the space below his shoulder, below the damage, the one place the doctors had not touched, and she settled there with the specific, complete trust of a child who has decided after careful consideration that this person is safe. He lifted his arm. Slowly, because most things cost him now, but he lifted it and he put it around her and he held his daughter for the first time in her life and the last time in his, and neither of them said anything because there was nothing left that words could do that this could not. Her hair was against his jaw. She smelled like the children's soap from her aunt's house and the cold of the hospital corridor and something underneath both of those things that was simply, specifically her. A smell he had never been close enough to know existed and would now never forget, in whatever time remained for forgetting. He could feel her breathing. The specific small rhythm of it. She could feel his. She pressed her ear more firmly against his chest after a moment, listening, and he understood that she was checking something. Making sure of something. He understood it and he did not move and he let her listen. In the corridor, Park Jin-woo stood with his hands still folded. The large quiet men had not moved in hours. The hospital sustained its careful, necessary hum around them, monitors and footsteps and the low distant sound of the city beginning to consider morning. And in room 307 Kang Tae Soo held 𝘉𝘳 Kang and thought about the bakery window and the back row and the school gate and every year of distance he had dressed up as protection and given to himself as justification, and he understood, with a clarity available only to men who have run out of time for anything else, that the distance had never been for her. It had been for him. Because presence required surrender. And he had not known until this specific moment, with this specific weight against his side and this specific breathing beneath his arm, what he had been surrendering instead. Everything, he thought. I surrendered everything. 𝘉𝘳's hand found his. Small fingers wrapping around his with the instinct of a child who has learned that holding on is how you tell someone they are not alone. He closed his eyes. For the first time in 14 years, Kang Tae Soo was not managing anything. He was simply here. 5:44 a.m. The monitor shifted. Not an alarm. A change in quality, subtle as the moment a room tips from night into the first gray suggestion of morning. 𝘉𝘳 felt it before she understood it. She had been half asleep against his chest, held in the specific suspended state between rest and waking, and the shift moved through her like a sound just below hearing, not loud enough to name, loud enough to wake. She lifted her head. She looked at his face. His eyes were open. They found hers immediately, with the same precision they had found her in the doorway 5 hours ago, as if locating her was the thing they were designed for, the one task they had never once required practice to perform. Park Jin-woo opened the door. The medical team entered in the quiet, purposeful way of people who had been prepared for this and were still, despite every preparation, fully present inside it. There was motion, careful, professional, necessary, and the sounds of equipment and low urgent instruction, and none of it was the thing that mattered, and every person in the room understood that. 𝘉𝘳 did not move from the bed. Nobody asked her to. His hand was in her hair. He had reached for it. She had felt it a few minutes before the shift, his hand moving slowly to her head with the unhurried intention of a man whose body knew something his mind was still holding on to. His fingers were still. But they were there. The monitor was finishing its sentence. The room was full of motion and low voices and the gray morning pressing the window. The city indifferent and ongoing, the way cities always are, the way the world continues at full speed through the moments that stop everything inside them. His eyes were on her face. Only her face. She leaned closer. She was 8 years old and she had already lost her mother, and she knew, with the bone-deep knowledge of a child who has already sat in a room while someone left it, exactly what was happening. She knew, and she did not look away. Neither did he. He said it very quietly. So quietly that the medical team did not hear it, that Park Jin-woo in the doorway did not hear it, that the city outside with its gray morning and its indifferent ongoing did not hear it. So quietly that it existed only in the 6 inches of air between his mouth and her ear, placed there for no one else, because it was never for anyone else. Goodbye, my lovely girl. His hand stilled in her hair. 𝘉𝘳 pressed her face against his chest. She did not make a sound. She held on, her small hands clutching his arm the way she had clutched it since she climbed onto the bed, and she held on and held on and held on, until the room was quiet and the monitor held its single, unbroken note and the morning came fully through the window, cold and steady and new. 3 years later. She opened the letter on the morning of her 11th birthday. She had known it was time, had known the way you know some things, in the body first and the mind after, without being able to explain the mechanism. She asked her aunt for it before breakfast. She sat at the kitchen table with both hands flat on the envelope for a full minute before she opened it. He did not explain the empire. He told her instead what she deserved. The inventory. Every school gate, every car window, every ordinary moment he had catalogued from the outside, because the outside was the only proximity he had known how to give her without bringing everything he had built through the door behind him. He told her that her mother was right. The distance was love, even when it was also wrong, and he asked her to hold both of those things at the same time because that was what the truth required, and she was strong enough for the truth. He told her that her mother was the best decision he ever made, and leaving was the worst, and that those two things lived in him simultaneously every day of his life. He told her to play piano badly sometimes. Because you laughed, he wrote. And I was in the back row. And it was the best sound I heard that entire year. It is still the best sound I have ever heard. Play badly sometimes. Laugh at the wrong notes. Don't let anyone teach you out of that. He ended on 8 words. You were worth every year of watching. Everyone. 𝘉𝘳 folded the letter. She sat with it for a while. Not crying, not yet, just sitting with it the way her mother had always sat with difficult things, giving them the full weight of her attention before deciding what to do with them. Then she placed it with the photograph. Amara luminous in the hospital bed, Tae Soo in his suit holding newborn 𝘉𝘳 with the face of a man finally understanding what he had to lose. She placed it with the small gold ring, Ghanaian gold, warm-toned, waiting still for the day she was ready. She put all three inside the inside pocket of her mother's coat. Underworld. Worn soft. Fitted now to 𝘉𝘳's shoulders. Hers now, fully, not a thing she was growing into but a thing she had grown to. She pressed them against her ribs. She felt their weight. He went to the piano. She opened the window first, cold morning air, the city just starting, and she sat down and she played. Not carefully. Not with the precision Ms. Choi had spent 2 years trying to install. She played the way she had played at the recital, open-handed, present, and when the wrong note came she did not wince. She laughed. Small and quiet, alone in the room in the morning, the way he had heard her laugh from the back row when she was 8 years old, and he was a man watching from the outside of the only thing that mattered. And somewhere in that laugh, in the specific frequency of it, in the way it rose and settled and left the room a little warmer than it had been, she understood. Not the distance. The love inside it. Finally. Fully. The way her mother always said she would.